Play ball.
How you doing, baseball fans? Welcome to another edition of the Brushback with JP Ricciardi. I'm John Arezzi, and this week we're going to do something really special. JP secured a fabulous interview with one of the greatest baseball executives in the game, Brian Sabean, longtime executive for the San Francisco Giants, spent many years there, and he is the right hand for Brian Cashman of the New York Yankees right now. So it is going to be a special batter up with JP and Brian Sabean. So we're going to go to that special right after these words from our sponsors here, because we always have to thank our sponsors. Our sponsors are, of course, Percy's Appliance Outlet. They feature brand name appliances at up to 80% off regular retail prices. They're Worcester's largest dealer of home appliances and electronics, serving Worcester for over 80 years. They are your 80% off appliance outlet. Once again, go to Percy's.com. Check out their great everyday deals on refrigerators, electronics, washers, dryers, bedding, and so much more. You can call 508-438-6800, and they do offer those same day or next day delivery options. So go to Percy's.com and check out all their great deals today.
Percy's Mattress Gallery, featuring the finest names in quality mattresses from Serta, Simmons, Beautyrest Black, and more, all at the guaranteed lowest prices with Percy's Price Match Guarantee. Percy's offers fast, expert, and professional delivery, installation, and removal. Shop in store or look for the green in-stock buttons online at Percy's.com, where long-term interest-free financing is available with the click of a button. The Mattress Gallery at Percy's, first on Gold Star Boulevard in Worcester.
And of course, the Brushback with JP has another great sponsor, and they are the actual sponsor for Batter Up with JP. They are the Worcester Bravehearts, and they are already planning for 2025 to make it an even better family entertainment experience than this year. And everybody who went to a Bravehearts game knows they offered great baseball combined with an overall great value for you and your family. And they're planning 2025 to do it all over again. You can follow them on Instagram at Woo Baseball for all the updates on the planning for 2025, or listen to those updates right here on the Brushback. Go to WorcesterBraveheartsStore.com to get some Bravehearts merch, including caps, t-shirts, jerseys, and sweatshirts today. And now it's time for Batter Up with JP. On this special Batter Up with JP, our special guest is one of the top baseball executives in the game and continues to have a storied career. He was the executive vice president of baseball operations for the San Francisco Giants, serving as the team's general manager from 1997 to 2014, having winning records for 13 of those 18 seasons with 3 world championships. He was the Baseball Executive of the Year in 2003, and his current role is the executive advisor for the New York Yankees, working with the executive VP and general manager Brian Cashman. It is a pleasure to welcome Brian Sabean to Batter Up with JP.
Hey, Sabes, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So let me back off, and I'm going to say things that Sabes is a very humble guy that he won't even want me saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Future Hall of Famer right here. They don't make them like this anymore, and one of the best GMs and a very good friend of mine, and I can't thank him enough for coming on. So, Sabes, I really appreciate it, and we're going to get into it because I know you're up against some time. So the first question I'm going to throw at you, buddy, is when did you fall in love with baseball?
Well, you know what's interesting, JP? I'm sure you had the same experience in Worcester. Our generation of athletes played all the sports. So I played football, basketball, which was shorter lived than my baseball interest in high school, but did play 3 through my senior year. and then actually went to the University of Maine to play football and baseball. But baseball always was a passion, as you know, playing probably only 20 games a season in the spring. In high school, you had to play catch up in the summer. So fortunately, I had a real good Legion program to plug myself into. And I think once you get into summer baseball, almost playing every day and traveling a little bit, it's a different kind of bug for a young athlete than perhaps the other sports. Now, fortunately, that generation also didn't have to concentrate on one. So I really believe those other sports, for a lot of different reasons, helped all of us be better baseball players in general. So early age, got the bug, and I think it was more the result of the amount of baseball we played in the summers.
You you start your career by coaching in college at a young age, and so take us through your early formative years as you move from playing into coaching and that whole realm of your life and how it formed your foundation to where you went from there. But you did a great job at the University of Tampa. You were our coach at St. Leo's. We apologize for that. But
Just the opposite.
no, so talk about moving into the coaching ranks at a your early age and how it formed the way you put your foundation in baseball.
Where I got lucky, I mentioned I'd gone to Maine. I got hurt in football and decided after my sophomore year, or actually after the fall semester, to transfer to Eckerd College for the spring semester of my sophomore year, where Joe LaFay, who was a classmate of mine at Concord High School, and Steve Balboni from Manchester, who we had played against, were already in the program. And as one thing led to another, it was a real good Division II team. Our 78 team went to the Little College World Series, lost to Cal Riverside. I pretty much rode the bench and was a role utility player. But as such, was lucky that guys like Bill Livesey, who was the head coach, and Jack Gillis, the assistant who became the head coach at St. Leo, who you played for, JP, took an interest in my passion. And I got to do a lot of things, as a player / coach. My junior and senior year, Bill had left after our junior year, and John Matt had come in my senior year. So that was kind of the formative stages, a launching pad for my interest in coaching. I then went to the University of Tampa subsequently after a short stay in St. Leo as an assistant coach for 3 years, and then became the head coach at a very young age, I think at 24, for 2 years, which would have been the 83 and 84 seasons with the University of Tampa and the old Sunshine State Conference. It's still percolating today. So really caught the bug in and around a real competitive team, and more so had the mentors I mentioned that kind of took an interest that this might be something that I might want to pursue, and they were right.
So you move over to the Yankees at that point. You're an area scout, but not for long. And then you move quickly into the front office as the scouting director, which is a big job. And, talk about your early formative years with the Yankees, because I don't think people understand how good the Yankees foundation was back then, and the part that you played with the scouting and building up the player development and the great drafts that you guys had. So speak to your time with New York and how that started to shape your formation to go on to bigger and better things.
I actually had a chance to go with the Yankees at the end of my 84 fall season with the university. And once that finished and I took the job with the Yankees, I scouted for the last January draft of 85. And then in 85, I was the area scout from I-4 down through Miami. Now, you're not going to believe this. My second year, I was single and I had a company car. And God forbid, even cross checkers back then really didn't fly. you're not going to believe this, but I had all of Florida and all of Georgia and was
Oh,
never home.
oh, how many
And I
miles?
think,
How many miles on the car?
minimum 50 plus thousand. I lost track. I remember after that season, I had to do 10 teams in the Southern League. When that was over, I ended up doing the instructional league Monday through Thursday. Then on Fridays, I would go to wherever the college tournament was during that time. And as you know, that was back in the unlimited schedule days, both in the fall and the spring. And every weekend there was a tournament somewhere in Florida or Georgia. And I'd pound the pavement, getting back and forth. And by Monday, I'd be back watching the instructional league. So, as fate would have it, being single, I think showing my proclivity for the work ethic needed, I probably was one of the best candidates in terms of availability and what they needed in the front office as a scouting director, because the aforementioned Bill Livesey had come into the organization, as I mentioned, in 1978, after we had gone to the World Series, and he was high ranking. He had recommended me, and he was really our de facto director in the field. So I was pretty much the office guy, although I did go out and cross check starting April 1st of '86, and Bill was our go-to guy, being the national cross-checker and really coordinator of scouting, and also Jack Gillis was involved as a regional cross-checker. So people I knew, people that I trusted, that really spent a lot of time, again, further mentoring me in the ways and the means of pro baseball. And as you know, back in our era, we kept our mouths shut, our ears open, our eyes open, and if people took a liking to you, you had a chance to make your way in the game, because they were looking for young people to, I think, carry on what they had planted the seeds for in their careers. And I miss those times. I look back and feel so lucky as to how, I understood first and foremost that scouting and player development are the keystones to any successful franchise in any organization.
So, Sabes, you touch on something that I think is totally lacking today. And you and I have had these conversations over the years, but think of what you got exposed to and what from rookie instructional league to colleges to double A. Talk about how that shaped you as a baseball person to be able to see these things and get exposed to them.
Well, I think your powers of observation, and as you grow as an evaluator, it's all about comparative analysis. And you're exactly right. When you're exposed to what I call all the different applicant pools, you start with the draft, and you've got high school interests, you've got junior college age players, juniors and seniors in college, as well as the summer programs that they played in. That's the first, I guess, class you have to master. And then when you had the opportunity in the summers to scout pro baseball, and I did the Florida State League also, was doing A ball and double A, you were exposed to the recent drafts and how players were matriculating and improving through player development in other organizations, including maybe seeing your own minor league teams, which I also did. And then, as you get into a front office position and exposed to the major league level, it really comes down to your ability, I think, to kind of see the forest through the trees. And, at every level, it's very important, because it's such a tough game to negotiate. It's a lot like life. Anything can happen in a given day, that you really have to be observant and almost, I don't even know how to explain it from a standpoint of, it's not so much the reporting process as is the retention. Because the likes of a JP Ricciardi that ends up going to the big leagues. There might be similar traits that I would end up seeing in a high school kid or a college kid or somebody in the minor leagues that I could look back and say, hey, these are the common threads that this type of player had and got to the big leagues, and that helps your powers of evaluation.
So I don't think a lot of our listeners would understand at this point how good the Yankees were back then from a scouting and a player development. And the group that you started to formulate was that group that turned into those powerhouses in the 90s. So speak to what the Yankee philosophy was. Speak to maybe what your marching orders, so to speak, from everybody from top to bottom, and how you put together that cohesive group that built that great core of players.
Well, it's a great question. I don't know if a lot of people know the history. There's been a book written by Andy Martino that just came out that kind of speaks to this. I was asked at the end of the '88 season, when I was still as director of scouting, to go to Florida. The boss had just taken over the old Cincinnati complex, and we were going to move our minor leagues from Hollywood, as you know, which was a horrendous setup, into more of a workable situation. And Joe Malloy at that time was in the process of becoming the de facto general partner because the boss was going to get suspended. And I think, being forward thinking, Mr. Steinbrenner wanted scouting and player development to be moved year round to this facility, which we, soup to nuts, had to bring up to speed. And I go into detail with this because I really think it was a vision, A, that he had that nobody else in baseball was doing. And then B, it was a way, with him being suspended for the game, while he lived in Tampa and the son-in-law was going to be in charge of the organization, he could kind of keep tabs. But what this did, as you know, JP, usually you would have your scouting director and player development director at the major league level office there. Now they traveled quite a bit and were in and out of the office a lot. But what this did, it put all of us under one roof. So the scouting and player development, started the day with coffee and usually ended the day with a couple beers. And it was a great think tank. It was a great era as far as how we, there was a lot of mutual respect because of the people in the room. And looking back, that was our foundation, because it was almost like an incubator where all the programs that you had and needed for player development were happening year round, but it went hand in hand with the scouting people that put the players in motion in the development system. So kind of happenstance, but I think that really was our secret sauce, that we were together, and the exchange of thoughts developed a way how we looked at scouting, a way how we looked at player development, and thus, as you coined it, there was a Yankee way, unlike some of the organizations, because we just had more time together to be able to build that foundation.
And speak to the effect that Steinbrenner had on the organization. Everybody always hears the negative things about Steinbrenner. We could list them as much as we want, but the one thing I always admired about George Steinbrenner was the number one thing for him was winning. And speak to that presence passing down through the organization and how that was a constant thread.
Well, I'll first start at the major league level. He spared no expense, A, to put the best product on the field, but in doing so, to have the resources needed around the players at any given point in time, starting in spring training. So the Yankees were the first to have, extra training staff extra coaches that flowed down into the minor leagues, where we had rovers before almost anybody else. We had strength and conditioning folks and extra trainers at each minor league club. We had a minimum of 3 and usually 4 coaches, including the manager, at each affiliate. So he was ahead of his time. I think it came from his football background, where he briefly was a college coach, and he saw that, through expertise in kind of a more systematic regimen, because of what you had as far as resources for the players to plug into that other teams and organizations didn't have, was a real advantage. So that was never a problem. And he really loved the minor leagues. He loved, as time went on, and that became a nerve center for the whole organization. Being in Tampa, he loved to come to our spring training games and the structure of the games, et cetera, et cetera. So he kind of was the Wizard of Oz behind the scenes that really allowed us to blossom when other teams perhaps were stuck in their old ways or didn't have the wherewithal financially to get the extras like we did.
So it's interesting because you're talking the late 80s and 1990. And
Yes.
baseball today is talking about how they have this and they have that and they have this. And you're talking almost 40 years ago where the Yankees were ahead of everybody. It's kind of blows your mind, doesn't it?
Well, I think the proof is in the pudding, as far as, the game slowly came around, realizing that with this kind of investment in talent, and as you know, being in scouting virtually all your life and exposed to the money side, the business side, the investment now in players is so staggering that you better have the bells and whistles, and you better have the safeguards, let alone the springboards that are going to allow players become the best version of themselves and the best possible big leaguers. But it was ironic that he had the vision early on. We were able to execute it and have success with it. And a lot of what we joke about today is, while the lingo's changed, while there is certainly a new age way of looking at things, a lot of this has been tried in a different era and a different way. It's just not rolled out in the same fashion or with the same vernacular, let's say.
So you obviously you bring Pettit in, you bring Mariano Rivera in, you bring all the studs, but touch a little bit on the draft of Jeter in the sense of, was it a slam dunk? Was it like he's our guy? Because he's obviously, I would say, out of all those guys, he's the head of the list. So what's the thought process on the possibility of how you guys came to the conclusion of he would be the guy?
Well, obviously, we took him the top of the first round, and even back then, before the advent of all the travel teams and all the summer baseball, he was on everybody's radar. Now, being from Kalamazoo, much like somebody from the Northeast, he wasn't an easy read, or he wasn't easy to scout. In fact, his senior year, he was kind of nursing an ankle problem that he wasn't full out in some of the games that he ended up being seen in. But one of the underlying factors is that both parents were very geared towards college education. Early on, he had pretty much committed that if he didn't sign, he was going to go to Michigan. One thing that turned my head as we all got a chance to see him that spring, and as you know or remember this, George was more geared to a college type of player where he could get quicker return on investment. Now, if the high school kid was uber talented as an athlete, or more so was mature physically or emotionally, we could run somebody like that up the flagpole, and he was one of the best athletes playing baseball in the country at that time, whether it was high school or college. And I remember when I went out to see him, miserable day, and I actually was with a very famous West Coast supervisor who had worked for Branch Rickey in Brooklyn and Pittsburgh, probably one of the best evaluators at his time, Don Lindbergh. And we both watched the game in silence. What he did that day was kind of nondescript. He wasn't full out as far as running to first base or even his movement at shortstop. And we got in the car, and I looked at him. I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Well, let me ask you what you think." And I said, "Well, we didn't see too much." I said, "But the kid oozes athletic ability." And Don was much older, and I was probably 30 something at the time. And he said, "Kid, if this guy's on the West Coast, we're not here because he's number one.
Wow.
He said, this guy just, he's an outlier. He's somebody that is going to be, once he gets to the big leagues, he's going to be a difference maker." Now, if everybody else that followed the story also knows, Dick Groach, who was the area scout,
Yep.
actually was pressed about, is he going to sign? Is he going to Michigan? And Dick's comment, or the facsimile therein, was he's signing because he's going to the Hall of Fame. That's how much he liked
Wow.
Jeter. So very lucky that we were in a position to select him, which is also interesting. If you remember, there was a outfielder from Stanford named Hammonds
Yes.
that ended up, Stanford played at Florida State, and I don't think Hammonds made a note. And during that tournament, they had sent Baltimore had sent Frank Robinson in to see Hammonds. And of course, he saw him play, the tournament of a lifetime. And they ended up taking Hammonds, which paved the way for us to be able to take Jeter. So a little bit of luck, I guess.
Yeah, crazy. So, Sabes, I could talk to you all day today, but I want to move through your career because it's been such a fascinating career and one I've always admired. You get an opportunity to go to the Giants, and you go as the assistant GM with under Bill Quinn, I believe.
Bob Quinn.
Bob Quinn. I'm sorry, Bob Quinn. Another New England guy, right?
Originally, yes. His dad had run the old Boston Braves.
Jeez.
So as crazy as that family went back.
So what prompted you to make the move, and what excited you about the move?
Well, it's a tough question to answer, but amongst friends, the situation with Mr. Steinbrenner on the outside looking in, being suspended, was not an easy one on anybody. I became vice president of player development scouting, so I ran both. George Bradley, who actually was I was a direct report to him, my boss, he ended up becoming a de facto co-GM with Gene Michael. And Gene Michael had treated me like a son and really went overboard to kind of teach me the ways of a major league front office, from the eyes of an ex-player, coach, manager, and cherished it beyond anybody's wildest dreams. And it really did lay a great foundation for me as I matriculated, into a GM position. But what happened was, because of my job as a vice president, I'd have to commute from Tampa to New York when the team was home. When the team was on, now this is all post-draft, when the team was on the road, I'd either go to the minor league ball club of choice, during the week they were on the road, or I'd come back to Tampa. And there developed some friction between New York and the Florida operation. And I didn't want to get caught up in that. I thought, being forward thinking, what was it going to be like when the boss came back, and how was he going to negotiate this, because it was kind of a power struggle.
Right.
And I didn't want to be in the middle of that. As fate would have it, Bob Quinn, who, if you remember, him and Bob left the Yankees as a front office vice president to take the Cincinnati Reds job in 1990, and he got Lou Piniella to be the manager.
Right.
Believe it or not, after Bob gets hired, he hires Lou. The next day, they call me. They want me to come to Cincinnati. Problem is, I just signed a 3-year contract and couldn't go. Now Bob is in position because he's moved on from Cincinnati to take the job in San Francisco. And he called me, and I said, look, the timing might be right. I'm getting a little bit nervous of how this thing could play out, and I don't want to get caught up in the machinations of the BS. And I went out and interviewed, and one thing led to another, and the rest was history. 30 years later, went to 4 World Series, and we won 3. And it really was a fortuitous. The timing was great, and I think I was vulnerable, really, at that time to move on.
Well, I don't think people, I don't think the Giants and you in general get enough credit for what you did in San Francisco. I think because of you not seeking the spotlight and just being the humble guy that you always are. I think the game today doesn't pay attention to the people that actually did something and accomplished something. And you went to 4 World Series, you won 3 of them, you built an amazing organization, and you did it by blending the modernization of baseball and the purity of baseball, the Dick Tidros and the people you surrounded yourself with. Talk about, and I know this is a long, open-ended question, but share your experience at San Francisco, because you built an amazing organization that didn't get enough credit, in my estimation, for all the accomplishments you had. And all these other people haven't accomplished anything, and they get the credit. So speak to how you went about building that front office, building that organization, and then the success you had.
Well, first and foremost, our ownership group was constantly around. Peter McGowan, who hired me at the time as the managing general partner, officed in the ballpark, starting in Candlestick, and then 2000 we went to Pac Bell at the time, and that was important in that we really got a feel that they were in it to win it and very supportive. And I always had a good relationship with Peter, the board, and Larry Bear as the team president. And I mentioned that in that they were pro wanting to win as much as us in the front office and the manager at the time, or the players themselves. And that became obvious and was a common thread through 3 managers. I don't think anybody really had the opportunity in their career like I did. When you talk about Dusty Baker going to the Hall of Fame, when you're talking about Felipe Alou, should be in every Latin Hall of Fame, and was one of the best game managers the game's seen during that era. And then Bruce Bochy ended up, being a recipient of winning 3 World Series and is going to the Hall of Fame. There was tremendous give and take, and I think there was, kind of a brain exchange of thoughts, and they all were different men. They all were different personalities. They looked at the game different. They ran the game different, but huge amount of mutual respect. And Lord knows we learned as much and more from them than they learned from us. But I mentioned all that in that our I guess our theme was we were going to try to outwork everybody with the opportunities we had and the things we could control. We kind of had a smaller group that did more things, were very expert in their areas. You mentioned Dick Tidrow. People also forget, Dick was our savant in the draft with our pitching, and including he ran the draft for quite a while until John Barr took over. And our first wave of, successful draftees that ended up being cornerstones of the pitching staff, were the mother of Dick's invention through the draft and player development. And then John came in, and his lane was the position players. So we saw firsthand the importance of scouting and player development, as well as I think because we were so loyal to each other and so loyal to the cause, and we weren't looking for the accolades because we really didn't have that type of ego. Now there was some firebrands at times that as conversations would go, or as the year would go, or a particular season would go, that we had to exercise our strong opinions, but we found a way to get along and do it in a way that it was low key. So we were, I hate to mention other sports, but very insular, almost like the Patriots, but successful to a fault because we took advantage of everything, including, you mentioned the modernization. People are naive to think that we didn't have, the analytics side of the house in place. There are two people that are still with the organization that were instrumental back in starting in 2009. Jeremy Shelley, who's now a vice president, was very adept in building our own models and algorithms, as well as Yeshaya Golf, who's also a vice president. The other thing is we were in the bastion in the cradle of the dot-com era, so we could go to anybody, and outside interests would actually come to us to run simulations, or as we did roster construction, we were kind of doing it in secret or almost behind the scenes like the military will, and nobody knew about it, but very handy. And it was a smaller group of people where the information was, developed by us, and it was proprietary. And, I really am disappointed that now, after the fact, as you mentioned, that these folks don't get the credit they should, that, as we were winning those 3 World Series, we were also playing against the field. So everybody that was jacked up from a new age standpoint, yeah, I guess, where we kind of separated ourselves was that we were worried about our own business. We didn't seek any kind of spotlight. We were very subdued, or I guess even monotone with the press. We kind of wanted to, over-deliver instead of talking a big game. And, there was a personality about us. Now, I will say one of the things that really helped with our team building, and I go back to the 3 managers and the coaching staff, was that we spent a lot of time, in coffee sessions, breakfast, lunch, happy hours, post game. We spent a lot of time together, and as you do that, you learn everybody's personality. You learn the hot buttons, and as well as you learn where people's real interests lie. And I think as a group, it made us special in that there was a greater sense of loyalty, and I think we showed that not being in a big market, let's say, or not being East Coast centric because of the media. And we had, as you know, Los Angeles to the south. One of the things I'm most proud of, other than the 3 managers we were able to work with, is that LA never won while we were running the shop. For 30 years, they didn't win. Matter of fact, it took a strike-shortened season for them to win. So
Duly noted.
I guess, I guess, I guess looking back, we were very people centric because the sport's like life, and it's a bitch. The highs and lows are real, and you really have to have a reason to go to work every day, and a reason to bust your ass like we did.
I always tell people the story. For me, I, every time I saw the Giants coming through, whether it was the GM meetings or the winter meetings, I would laugh my ass off because it'd be you, it'd be Bochy, it'd be Tidrow. There would be like 4 or 5 of you, and you guys, you just reminded me of the Sopranos. I said, here they come, the Sopranos. They're coming right through. They're gonna kick some people's ass and they're gonna move on. But you built such a nice core, and to be able to win 3 world championships with 3 different clubs without Bonds too, one of the greatest players of all time. It's just amazing to me the ability to pivot that you guys had, the ability to build off of. Oh, we got good pitching this year. We need to add this. And I think it's the symmetry that you built that created that. Speak to that a little bit.
Well, our roster construction, first and foremost, really by virtue of the ballpark, we had to be able to pitch. And, back when we did it, JP, and didn't make any difference where you were, you were looking for 800 to 1,000 innings out of your starters. And we were brought up in a game where the starters were your keystone, and then you tried to build a solid, competent bullpen as you went along, and especially with a trustworthy closer, because you needed to. If you're going to win, if you're going to go to the playoffs, you got to win the games you're supposed to win. Now, within that made us also have to play defense and what I call honor 90 feet. You have to prevent the opposition from taking and getting 90 feet. And likewise, you have to be in a position to take 90 feet. And that goes hand in hand with the type of defense you play. That goes hand in hand with how you base run, whether you go first to third, second home, first home. I mentioned all this. To beat us during the regular season, or more so once we got to the playoffs, you had to play baseball against us. If we could find a way to score 4 runs and get into the 7th inning with a lead, usually, especially in the playoff, the games were over. We played in very few playoff games, or even pennant race games, that it was a shootout. But that was the nature of the beast back then. The DH wasn't in both leagues. You didn't have the 3-batter minimum, so you could kind of use your bullpen in a different fashion. But I was very proud that we played a certain style, and within that, as you had a common thread going forward, whether it was the position players or people forget, we had 4 relievers, which is crazy. I don't know how they stayed healthy. In Lopez, Affelt, Casilla, and Romo, that were part of the 3 World Series.
Yeah.
And I think, as you saw when we got to the postseason, but more so, I look at the teams that we faced from the American League. I think what surprised them was what they were up against as far as how we were going to take care of our own business. Now, our toughest matchup, as it turned out, because they were very much like a National League team, was Kansas City. And, as it turned out, when we lost Game 7 in 2002 to Anaheim, who also was like a National League team in the American League, which I never got over. Lord knows we're in the 7th game, and, the secret weapon, which had been rehearsed, was Bumgarner. And you hear the stories, not only from our players, but the people that were in the Kansas City dugout. Once Bumgarner came out of the bullpen, it was almost as if, A, they didn't expect it, and B, they were really up against it. And that will never be done again. I mean, that's like a John Wayne movie, and it's something to behold. So, I think also, and you know the personalities. We had Tidrow at the minor league level, and then through all those years, starting with Dusty, and through three managers, we had Dave Righetti as the pitching coach and Mark Gardner as the bullpen coach. Who's ever heard of that? They were
Right.
that good that they went through, or were on the staff of three different managers. That's how good they were.
Continuity. So, out of the three world championships, this is like probably asking you about your kids. Is there a favorite one? Is there one you sit back and say, I think we did a little more than we were expected? I mean, I know they're all have their own special place for you. Is there one more than the other?
Well, the first one in 2009, as we were waiting for our, foundational pieces to come through the minor leagues, I think we finished 2 or 3 games out of the last wild card. So we knew that the fortunes were about to turn. Now in 10, I want to say at one point we were anywhere between 8 and 10 games behind San Diego. And as fate would have it, they went into a downturn. And, we kept playing or outplaying them by the week. So it went down to the final weekend. Now, the irony was we had to beat them once in this 3-game series at home. If not, if we had gotten swept, we would have been at a tie, and we would have had to go to San Diego on a Monday to play the playoff game. And we lost on Friday and Saturday. So as soon as we lost on Saturday, and you had to come in Sunday, try to win the game. If you didn't, you had to pack for Monday. And then if you won the Monday game, you were on the road for the playoffs to begin, no matter where you were going to end up playing.
Right.
And I went into Boach's office and I said, I don't know if you talked to anybody. And the travel guy was in there. I said, you need to get your ass in and tell these guys not to pack. If we, for some reason, lose tomorrow, which we're not, we'll buy clothes in San Diego. I said, we're either winning tomorrow or we'll win Monday. I don't want to see one friggin' suitcase in this clubhouse that's going in the dumpster. And
Nice.
Boach went in the clubhouse at a 5-minute meeting with the traveling secretary. He said, fellas, this is orders from headquarters. Don't come in here with any bags. We're winning tomorrow. And, stories like that, as well as how it just captured Northern California, and you saw, what it meant to people. We knew we had the fan base, but we didn't know generationally how people would react, because for a lot of years, that organization had some great teams going back to the 60s and never could punch through. So we stood on the shoulders of a lot of people, including our fan base, and that's why it was special, including the parade. The parade was one of the most amazing things I've ever experienced.
Well, you're so blessed. You got to do it 3 times. That's an amazing accomplishment. And your career is almost come full circle now. You're back with the Yankees. You're obviously in a different role. Are you enjoying what you're doing right now?
I am, because it's geared to player evaluation, whether it's for the draft or the trade deadline or seeing our minor league clubs, evaluating the major league club. I'll get into some free agent streaming here, but we're excited after what was a disappointing and unexpected year last year to be in a position to win the division. And as we were joking off camera early on, before we started, the last 2 weeks is more of our DNA than what we went through for 2 months. And I really, I think if we pitch, we'll cover our warts. Now, having said that, we're not very trustworthy with the infield defense. Base running as a team is not what it should be. And Lord knows, if you face a pitching staff, and there are some out there, especially at the end of the game with some of these bullpens, if they're able to neutralize Judge and Soto, if the rest of that lineup doesn't find a way to contribute, we're going to have a tough go. Now, you win the division, you get that bye, you're able to reset things, including who you want your starters to be, as well as we're in the process of figuring out who we want to finish the game because we backed Holmes off.
Right.
There's time to do that. Whether it's us or anybody else, I hate like hell to play that first series, and it's a best of three, and it really is. Can you have 3 good days, or at least 2 out of 3 good days?
It's a trap series. So I would ask you this, Sabes, as someone who's been in the game so long, has accomplished so much. What do you like about the game, and what are your concerns about the game as it continues to move forward?
Well, what's interesting is I think the Yankees have a pretty good blend, but I'll just pivot to their younger generation. What I've experienced is that they're all ears. They want to be mentored. They want to hear about your experiences, or I think if you look back at our careers, JP, including the area we grew up in, we had a lot of great home training from a lot of different people and learned a lot of valuable lessons. But I think we developed a leadership trait through all the experiences, but especially the crisis management. Most of our days was a bunch of BS until if we could get to the game, you said you had a good day. There were a lot of days before and after that friggin' game that you don't know if you were going to get to the game. And I think, when they understand that, A, this has to be a real passion, and then B, you got to be invested. I mean, this is 24 hours, and this is 7 days a week, and this is year round, especially if you're in the front office. Now, having said that, you got to find time for family, and you got to find time to keep your sanity. So I do think that the younger generation, no matter how you coin what this movement is, are all ears to a certain extent. I don't know if they fully appreciate, what can be learned, or the wisdom from the times that we went through, and how the game has modernized, as you said. And it's not just because of Moneyball. It's not just because of let's say the new age way of thinking with the new front offices. It's a technological world, and it sooner or later baseball had to follow suit. So there are more measurables, but in general, I wish the sport was more collaborative in a real way, and find a way that you're a piece of the pie, and that the most powerful decisions you actually make these days coming from your scouting lane in conjunction with your analytical lane. And there shouldn't be any acrimony, or there shouldn't be any infighting as who's got the best answer or who's got the best practice.
Right.
I think that's what's lost in translation, either how this gets rolled out, or there are lessons learned from history in general, including baseball, and that you have to pay attention to the past, if not for just repeating, bad mistakes.
Wow, I couldn't have said that any better. That was well summed up. Sabes, I can't thank you enough. I know you're busy. You got to get going. You got your family there. Thanks so much for doing this. Still one of my favorites. Always admired everything you did. Had nothing but respect for you. Always appreciate the time you always gave me. And looking forward to following the rest of the Yankees season for you. But thanks again, and we'll catch up with you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, JP. Miss you.
Take care, bud.
Guys.
Thanks, Sabes.
Great interview with JP and Brian Sabean. What a legendary, probably future Hall of Fame executive. So great interview by JP, and that's going to wrap up this edition. A very good one with that great interview with Brian Sabean. Don't forget to follow JP on social media. It's the place to go to see some great content, opinions, clips from this program, clips from JP's announcing, and analysis for Nesson. And you could follow JP on X and Instagram at RICCIARDIJP. Subscribe to this show on all your favorite podcast platforms and check out our YouTube channel. We're there with every single episode, and you can check it out at youtube.com/Brushback with JP Ricciardi. Until next week, when we return, this is John Arezzi for JP. Have a great week, everyone.